You say you want emotional independence, but you don't. You want people to respond the way you hope they will. You want the message to be answered. You want the opinion to be accepted. You want the effort to be noticed. And when it isn't, your chest tightens. You check your phone again. You reread what you said. You replay your tone. You wonder if you sounded too cold, too intense, too honest. You call it caring, but what you are actually feeling is instability. Your emotional state is moving based on someone else's reaction, and every time you wait for approval, reassurance, or praise, you quietly hand over command of your nervous system. You are not hurt by criticism. You are destabilized because you trained yourself to use validation as fuel, and anything that fuels you can control you. This isn't random weakness. It's a system. Watch it carefully. You speak, you post, you share an idea, then you wait. That waiting is not neutral, it is loaded. Your brain predicts a reaction. Approval feels like safety, silence feels like threat. Then the response comes, a compliment, a disagreement, nothing at all. And your internal state shifts accordingly. Not because you chose to shift, but because your nervous system was already bracing for impact. Repeat this long enough, and something dangerous happens. You stop acting from principle. You start performing for outcome. You soften your opinions in meetings. You laugh at things you don't find funny. You adjust your personality depending on who is watching. You say you are adapting, but you are negotiating your identity. And this is only the visible layer. You were told approval equals connection. That reassurance equals love. That praise equals value. So you learn to associate external confirmation with safety. Now notice what happens. When someone replies quickly, you feel relief. When they delay, you feel tension. When they disagree, you feel exposed. You pretend you don't care. But later, alone, you replay the conversation. You edit it in your head. You imagine saying it differently, stronger, smarter, less confrontational. You tell yourself you value honesty. But you measure your honesty by how people react to it. That is the brutal truth. You don't fear criticism, you fear loss of approval. And the more you breathe approval like oxygen, the weaker your internal lungs become. Dependency does not feel like chains. It feels like normal behavior, until the moment approval disappears. Then anxiety reveals what was holding you together. Here is where this stops being about feelings and starts being about structure. When your emotional state depends on response, your behavior begins adjusting automatically, not consciously, automatically. You hesitate before speaking. You edit yourself mid-sentence. You watch faces while you talk. You measure reactions more than meaning. You think you are being socially intelligent, but what you are actually doing is scanning for permission, and over time this changes something deeper. Your opinions become softer. Your convictions become negotiable. Your personality becomes situational. You become easier to influence, easier to pressure, easier to silence. Not because you lack intelligence, but because your stability is adjustable. And adjustable minds do not lead. They adapt to whoever applies pressure. This is why the Stoics did not attack emotion. They attacked dependency, because dependency removes command. When command is lost, character bends for approval and breaks under criticism. Now the law becomes necessary, not philosophical, necessary. Epictetus divided existence into two domains: what is within your control, what is not. Approval was never placed in the first category, yet you treat it like oxygen. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself daily, "If it is not your judgment, it is not your power." Read that again internally. If it is not your judgment, it is not your power. When praise lifts you and criticism collapses you, your judgment is not sovereign, it is reactive. But here is what most people misunderstand. This is not about suppressing emotion, it is about reinstalling rule. Before any reaction, there must be evaluation. Before evaluation, there must be standard. And most people do not have one. They borrow it from the room. Here is the principle most people never install. Your internal state must not negotiate with external feedback. Not praise, not silence, not rejection. When criticism arrives, pause. Not to defend, not to counterattack, to examine. Is it true? Is it useful? Does it align with your chosen standard? If yes, adjust your behavior, not your worth. If no, discard it without emotional debt. When praise arrives, register it, but do not consume it. Approval is data, not nourishment. If you eat it, you will starve without it. This is the moment emotional independence is built, not in isolation, not in indifference, but in disciplined refusal to let external response define internal structure. This feels uncomfortable at first, because withdrawal from validation feels like loss. But what you are losing is not love. You are losing dependency, and dependency will fight to survive. There are two kinds of minds. One performs for approval, one acts from principle, one scans faces, one scans its own alignment, one softens truth to maintain acceptance, one maintains truth regardless of reception. One seeks permission to feel stable, the other decides stability is not up for negotiation. If your emotional state improves when praised and collapses when criticized, you are not stable, you are adjustable. And adjustable identities dissolve under pressure. If your emotions require approval to rise and permission to remain steady, they are not yours, they are rented, and rented stability can be revoked at any moment. Emotional independence is not about caring less. It is about needing less confirmation to remain who you are. Because the moment your internal state stops negotiating with the outside world, you stop being controlled by it. That is sovereignty, and sovereignty does not ask to be approved. If you're committed to building a Stoic Titan mindset, write training in the comments. Make it visible to yourself and to others.